Thanks, Dave. I guess just to start off, to answer your question over there, I think there's a great tool called Built With that's free to use, and you can use it later on, and it can tell you, break down in what sector, what e-commerce companies use in terms of their back-end technology. I love e-commerce. My name's Hadi Irvani, and I want to sort of tell you a little bit about my experiences in e-commerce. Before that, I sort of want to tell you a bit about myself. I love to cook. This is me making a dishwasher salmon. I don't know if anyone's made dishwasher salmon, but you put salmon in the dishwasher and you cook it, and it tastes really good. So I enjoy hard work, and I started getting into e-commerce about 4 years ago with my family shoe company called Okabashi, and I grew the sales of that from about $1 million to over $3 million, leveraging things that worked, not reinventing the wheel, using Amazon Web Services. I used a product called Amazon Web Store, and it helped focus and spend our time on what works. Having loved e-commerce, I got hooked with these guys who were really passionate about preppy clothing and hated being lawyers, and they started a company called Country Club Prep, and we've grown that company to this year. I think we're going to do about $6 million. It's about a 2.5-year company. And so I wanted to follow what I'm passionate about, which is e-commerce and food. So this is what I founded last year. It's called PeachDish. We send all of the ingredients for dinner for two nights of the week through the mail, and you cook it. And we're an experience company. We help you reconnect with your kitchen. And our recipes are Southern-based and internationally inspired, kind of like me. So they're great menus. It varies. Our first iteration of our product didn't work out, but the product that we have now has really worked out. So it's all about learning and trying and being iterative in a startup. So I'm going to sort of talk about some of the large picture at first of some 4 key things that I found to do and some 4 things that I say don't do. And then I'm going to go into some great tips and tricks that I really like with regards to e-commerce. I think some people sort of like to go look at big pictures or other things. The thing that really drives me at nights and at the day is to find out, okay, can I find this thing that helps push the needle a little bit and increase our conversion rates? And so that's sort of what we'll go into. So the first big question is don't reinvent the wheel. There are a lot of systems out there that work, that are great. They're great platforms for doing e-commerce. Just leverage a platform, use what works, and focus your efforts on what's really important. But at the same time as that, don't stop iterating with your business. So if there's another opportunity, always go and figure out new ways to go and get revenue. And I'm a sort of big fan of listening to the customer, and I think Jeff Bezos says it's best. I mean, the customer, you have to put them first. So they're really, really important. But your customers can call you up. They could say, oh, you've maybe sent them bad food, or it didn't come out right. No matter what happens, you need to be enthusiastic. You need to smile and really sort of enjoy and be happy, because you can't let anything stop you. So 4 things that you should do is focus on really what matters. If you can outsource a function, go ahead and outsource it. It's great to pursue strategic alliances. That helps you sort of get places, and I think that's great for us. We're here today. Leverage and sort of work on your core competencies. If there's something that's not core to your business, don't work on that. Really get your core and get that working right. And the other thing is you're only one person, so really it's about scaling up and make sure that your team of people who you bring on are great. Look after them, buy them dinner. If you want, buy them a PeachDish. If you want even more, cook for them. So that's sort of what we've done. So some tips and tricks that we're going to go through is to experiment continuously. Don't stop innovating. It's always about innovation that we get new things. Look at reducing costs. At the end of the day, it's a business where you buy things and sell things. So managing your costs wisely is really important. We'll go through some great growth hacking techniques, talk about sort of content and the team. So experimenting. Things don't work out. You might have problems. Problems are great because then you can have really innovative solutions. At PeachDish, we're thinking about the customers, and we really want to have the customers be able to decide up until the last minute, the day of, whether they get their box or not. So we guess every week how many boxes it's going to be. Some weeks we sell out and we don't get any boxes ourselves. Other weeks we have a couple of extra. And what we did with these extra boxes is we went to offices and we took these boxes and we said, we're PeachDish, we're a young new company, come and hear about us. People would tweet and have us come in. And we'd have 20, 30 people come into the room, but we'd only bring 4 boxes in there. So there'd be a fight over who gets to make the boxes. People do Instagram hashtags with PeachDish meals, and it's a really great experience. And it's a great sort of solution of great marketing spend that comes from a problem. So it's great to experiment. This is one of my favorite experiments. It's called Mystery Coupon. And if you do this email, and you cannot, you'll be amazed at what happens. Just do it. Basically, the idea is that you give your customers a coupon. With this coupon, you don't tell them what the discount is. You just tell it, this is coupon, go to checkout, find out what this coupon is. It's a mystery. And customers, people really want to know what this coupon is. So they're then, okay, let's find out what it is. We'll go to the cart, spend all this time. Okay, what do I want? And then they'll add it to their cart. Then they'll go to checkout. Then they'll put the coupon in and see what the discount is. Then they'll go and purchase that item. And you'll see that this type of marketing email works really, really, really well. I won't say any more. Just try it. So reducing costs. It's really, really important to manage your costs wisely. And I've sort of, I guess, in growing a Kobashi, one thing that we had is we had lots of problems of fraud. So we were spending our times at first worrying about credit card fraud. We were spending time with customer service. Okay, what do we go do? We also sort of had one of our providers go and basically say, okay, we're going to go and raise your rates if you don't do these certain things. And we had the situation. And I've chosen to partner with Amazon because their rate structure at $100,000 plus per month is 1.9%, which you can't beat. It's actually a percentage point less than lots of the other competitors. And if you're doing $10 million in business, that's $70,000. And e-commerce is a small margin business. A friend of mine has a business where he's only making a 10% profit margin. And so it's really important to spend your dollars wisely. And I personally don't like to go and spend an extra $70,000 to credit card processing fees. And I think what's also really good is if you can sign up for an Activate account, you can actually get an additional $10,000 in credit card fees waived. So I think it's great to sort of go and leverage all of these free systems. So I don't think anyone should really develop without using Pay with Amazon because it's such a great system. You also sort of don't need to put in your credit card. You might be lazy and hate typing in credit cards. I don't like putting it in. And there are more consumers who use Amazon than any other platform out there. So that's that. Another sort of great thing that I like are Fiverr. It's a great way to go and get Facebook likes. I know a couple of you in the room have been talking and have ways. It's a great way to sort of get you going at first, to give you that first initial street cred of, okay, we got some Facebook likes. WordPress is a great platform in terms of a content management system. I think a lot of coders just try to sort of go and build things themselves. Just use WordPress. Amazon CloudFront, I think the Amazon services is fantastic, but specifically the CloudFront technology as it relates to Google SEO. Google goes and looks at your infrastructure of your site. And if you're using CloudFront, I think they sort of give you a slightly better ranking. So I highly recommend using that. And it's really, really cheap. It's free, basically. And then we'll go into some more of the Instagram hack, which is great. Elance, if you log on to PeachDish.com, you can talk to Terrence. Whilst we're a startup, I'd love to have a full-time US customer service team, but we just can't afford it. So Terrence is making $3 an hour. He's really happy, and he's doing a great job. So really focus on sort of what's really important. We have a great team who we spend our efforts on developing great menus, and that's sort of where we spend our efforts and money. Growth hacking, this is a sort of great topic. One thing that I found that really works well is a follow-back strategy. So specifically what you go and do is, and there are different platforms. Facebook as a platform, I think sort of kind of has become really bad. You spend all this money developing a great audience, and if you sort of want to go and target your own audience, you just give them $1,000 just for them to go and see one post, which is kind of ridiculous. With Instagram, what you can do is you can actually go and follow people back. And at PeachDish, our first employee, Alex, she found her job through Instagram. We went and followed her. She was working at the Best Restaurant Group in Atlanta. She saw that we had a job opening, and she came and applied. So, and I have some other Instagram hacks if you guys want to talk about it offline, which are really cool. TriBoost is a similar service. You can get a 2-week free trial with them with Twitter. They do the same tactic. They go follow people in your category and bring them back. It's worth it. So creating great content is important. That's what you should focus on. At PeachDish, I'm really proud to say that we use a $45 Code Canyon template, and just focus on things that are important. So it's a nice template, but that's sort of how much we spent on designing our first front end of our website. Then Just Uno is a great system for social bribery. And what it is basically is I could give you a coupon, right? Or I could give you a discount. But if I make you work for something, you're much more likely to be engaged. If I give you a meal and I get you to go cook that meal, that meal is going to taste so much better. The same thing applies with Just Uno. Essentially what they do is they make you go like, follow, give an email address, and then you can get a discount. The same thing applies. They've actually sort of just relaunched. They're based here in San Francisco. And what they also have is a hover intent exit. You can go and spend $2,500 on using a service called Bounce Exchange. If someone's on your website and then they're about to go and leave to go to another website, you can intercept them and put some message. Well, that's hover intent exit. It's 5 lines of JavaScript. Just Uno built that into their platform in 2 weeks, and it works well. PattyAct also built that into their platform, and it works well. And what PattyAct also does is it helps you get email subscribers. And the way it does it is you can go and test different messages at different times. But it's really about asking the right question at the right time. So it just pops up on the right-hand side and asks people for their email address. It's a great tool, also free to start using, so I recommend looking at it. Autoresponders are fantastic, and they help give a personalized message. Creating content, this is an example of one that I use to sort of make everyone feel as if it really is a community when you join PeachDish, when you become a member. So we like to personalize it. 50 minutes after you sign up, you get a personalized email from me. We've done the same thing with content emails. Consumers get tired of marketing emails, so it's great to have a series of autoresponders with just standard content as to where your product comes from. So creating a great dynamic team is really the most important thing for scaling up, and you can't do everything yourself. So it's great to bring on great people. At PeachDish, we have a great team, and we started off with just me about 12 months ago, and I brought on Alex in September. But before that, I had a board of advisors, and everyone wants to join a startup and become part of it. So make sure you bring on a board of advisors of people who look good, who are your friends, and bring them on your board. And then later on, they'll sort of come in. So that's sort of a great thing to do. And then I guess the last sort of thing is I guess, motivate people. It's fun to work for a startup. I personally think that everyone should have really fun headphones, so everyone has urban ears, which is great. We have lots of free food at PeachDish, because we're a food company, and we sometimes eat more meals. And we also have sort of milestone adventures. So basically, as we go and hit this, for every 100 customers that we go add, we go and hit another adventure and go and have some fun. So with that, I want to thank you and give you my final thought, which is life is short. You really need to enjoy the adventure. Enjoy the process. Enjoy your work. And then everything else will come together. So with that, I want to see if you guys have any questions. Yes?
You mentioned it 12 months ago, it was just you, brought on people afterwards. Can you talk about sort of life as a somewhat solo? I mean, I know you had people around you and you freelancers and things, but was life as a solo entrepreneur in the early days?
So I think in the early days, I tried to do too much. And the question was, can you talk about life in the early days? Life in the early days, it was just me. And I sort of tried to go and do the shipping and everything. And what I then really realized is that it's important to bring on a lot more people onto your team. So even just through a board of advisors, that really helped me create more of a team and create more of an infrastructure to go and get things done. And that's really sort of, I guess, the most important is, I guess, creating a team environment, because you might be brilliant, but really at the end of the day, it's a business, it's a company, and a company is defined by a group of people. So it's really about that group of people who you bring together.
Hadi, first of all, thank you very much. Great enthusiasm on stage. I really appreciate it personally. One of two questions, please pick. Do you have any great failures that we can learn from on the demand gen side? Because I really found some of your ideas on the demand gen side really, really good. But I'm sure that you've tried some that haven't worked. And the second question, what setting do you set your dishwasher on to cook? I don't have that setting personally.
Okay, yeah. So that one, I mean, the dishwasher salmon, it might sound really great, but actually,
Not great.
it was a 30-person dinner party. I've done dishwasher salmon, and usually I sort of do like a sort of 2-pound piece of salmon, but that was 2 12-pound salmons. So it actually took 2 cycles, and it was still sort of kind of sashimi grade. And the other question.
Failure in demand gen.
So failures in demand gen, I guess I hate to say it, but I've ran with Pandora, for example. They used to be, it's all about supply and demand. And I studied economics at university. So Pandora used to be really cheap, and I understood that, like, okay, I'd heard the word on the street was Pandora's good to go and advertise, and yet then we did a media buy with them, and it just didn't perform at all. At the same time, that's probably the biggest failure is just sort of going and doing that. You want to go and fail, and it's great to fail, but try to fail with smaller amounts. And go and try lots of different things, test it, measure it, and then go on to the next thing. But always be testing these different things. I mean, one thing comes in, one thing. Okay, let's go test it. I think mystery coupon works really well. Some of our Instagram follow backs works well. Pinterest, actually, our Pinterest follow back is okay. And I also thought that like Pinterest commenting would work well, but that really hasn't worked well as a sort of follow back strategy. It's just not worth the time, at least in our rendition. So, yes.
How did you build your board of advisors? And at what point did you decide that it was time to get other people's opinions and advice?
So when I set out from the beginning, I found really people who were in the space who I thought were really, really bright. And I was telling everyone, okay, I'm looking to sort of go into this industry. And essentially what I did was I just hosted a monthly dinner party for them. And I said, I'd like you to sort of come to dinner every month. And I sort of invited these other people. And then it's become a little bit more formal. And that's really how it came about, was just through them coming in and joining as board of advisors. So.
Are you shipping fresh ingredients, and how are you handling shipping in general?
So I love e-commerce, and we are shipping fresh ingredients. We started off shipping in the USPS regional rate B box, which is a flat rate box in certain areas. So if you're shipping in a regional area, up to 20 pounds, it's a great product. As we started to scale, we were actually able to go and get a company called LaserShip, which is much better pricing. And in recreating the wheel, like Amazon has great philosophy, and they've done all this research as to like how to go do the best shipping. Just follow what they do. Just copy what they do. Don't reinvent it. So we have a contract with LaserShip, and then we're also sort of using UPS, and we've gone to a larger box. And I guess in using Amazon's methodology, we're playing UPS up against LaserShip, trying to get lower shipping rates, as that's the biggest driver in COGS. And okay. Thank you so much. Oh, or what?
So sorry, don't know if you have time. You mentioned something about a fraud issue, and that's very common with subscription companies. So what did you do to address it other than go to Amazon? Can you talk a little bit about from an operational perspective?
So we use Amazon FPS for our payment gateway. And essentially, there's no fraud on there. You can do something called a reserve, so you can verify that those funds are available, and you can pull those funds out. I guess before we were actually using PayPal, and we had actually about $15,000 worth of fraud a year, and it's just such a hassle that I don't have time for that, or like buying fraud detection software. They only have so many hours in the day, so just go with the one that has 0% fraud, no questions asked. Thanks.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Okay, our last presentation for the track is Jerry Zhao, co-founder and CEO of Retention Science, and he's going to tell us about Startup's Guide to Customer Retention.
Thanks, Dave. I guess before I start, just quick show of hands, who's actually building an e-commerce here? All right, cool. So a lot of you guys. So we'll talk about, I guess my session is going to be a lot of metrics. So some of it is going to be a little different from some of the guys shared earlier, because we're all about retention. So what happened to the customers after they come through the funnel, and how do you make sure that you sustain a business long term? Before I start, kudos to 500 Startups. I've spoken at quite a few conferences over the year, but this is the first conference where my client spoke before me, which was Honest Company, and my investors are speaking after me, which is Foreigner Venture. So I thought that was pretty interesting. I've never had that. There we go. A little bit about me. I actually didn't have a slide about this, but Tara, the organizer, told me to put it up. So it's slightly embarrassing, but I love e-commerce. I founded my first e-commerce company when I was 15. I started on eBay. Figured, I was just a nerdy Asian guy. I would sell Game Boy games, comic books, whatever you can think of. And then I built the business big enough, and I started selling, just learn how to code, and then started selling on online. And this is the good old days where you can still charge $6.99, $7.99 for shipping and handling. And that really were the sweet days. And now, we're all fighting for free shipping both way, and that's pretty tough. A little bit about me. Since I founded my first e-commerce, I've really just enjoyed the aspect of being able to reach out to customers anywhere in the world, and being able to ship some materials where you just, and the follow-up experience is also really interesting to me. Since then, I've founded 2 startups that are focused on marketing, especially around retention, because one thing that, as an operator and a marketer, that I always ran into is that I had no problem hacking my way through getting customers to my site. But the problem is always around, once I get those customers, how do I retain them? How do I get them to spend more with me? And ultimately, how do I get them to share with others and generate that virality that we all care about? So a little bit about my company. We basically help businesses like Honest Company, Dollar Shave Club, Cafe Press, Vitamin Shops, Those are some of the companies that we work with, and some sort of traditional big box retailers that we've all heard about. What we do at the end of the day is to create a more one-to-one experience for all these retailers and online e-commerce. The biggest challenge that we all face as e-commerce is that there's no physical and human interaction. So when you walk into a Nordstrom store, typically you will be the sales associate might be able to look at you and say, okay, you're holding a Fifth Saks Avenue bag, you're going to be a good customer. Versus if Jerry, I were to walk in with an Old Navy bag looking super ghetto, the sales associate is probably going to leave me alone, thinking that I'm not going to be a good target audience. So with that said, e-commerce, your challenge is to figure out who exactly your customers are, not just the moment they get to your website, but then as you continue to grow, how do you actually understand who they are and then be able to retain and re-engage them in such a way that it's personalized and it's relevant and it's timely. At the end of the day, there are really two ways to grow your business. So, and I think there's no rocket science behind that. And you need to focus on acquiring new customers, which Hadi talked about, and then you need to retain your customers and get them to spend more. And then this session, we're going to focus on the second half of it, which is once you get the customers through the door, how do you get them to spend repeatedly, and as well as get others to join your site. Someone actually earlier, I think it was Harley from Shopify, mentioned that there was a report that talked about existing customers spend about 48% more. And there's actually been a lot of different stats around just how important it is to actually get your existing customer to spend. We've actually seen different stats. So for example, existing customers spend about 33% more on average. And that's actually a very, very important stat because if you think about it, for every new customer acquisition, and so if you're paying someone to refer a friend and then you're going to give that person $15 for signing up a new account and then actually reward you for $15, then that math, if you were to do that math in the long term, unless those customers actually spend repeatedly with you, it actually doesn't make sense. And then you're going to run into a case where I think Sean Percival talked about earlier during his time with Whittleby. And we actually, for a brief period of time, thought thinking about working together because we're both based in LA at the time, is that you're going to always end up spending more and not realizing that you're not getting the kickback afterwards. And then the math doesn't add up, and then you're going to run into issues of raising venture money because that's all they're going to care about. Another example of why existing customers matter, just to give you a sense of scale, I recently talked to the head of e-commerce at Ticketmaster. On average, every single their user spend per year is 1.8 tickets. If they can actually increase that repeat purchase rate just by just 0.1 to 1.9 or even 2, that translates to millions and millions of dollars. Now, of course, that's very different for some of us that are just getting started, or some of the more mature, e-commerce brand that's been around, whether it's Warby, whether it's Bonobos, and any of those guys. They're thinking about the same thing. So what I'm, I guess, reemphasizing is that the earlier you start thinking about acquiring the better customers that are easier to retain in long term, the better you will be and the stronger your business will be in the long term. And hopefully it will be easier for you to raise those venture dollars. Some of the things to think about, I think there's been a lot of conversations around spend wisely and also figure it out what are the channels that you really should leverage to acquire your customers. We tend to argue a different angle. We actually think about when you acquire customers, it's actually really important to really monitor the effectiveness of those channels and then understand exactly what type of customers tend to go through what kind of channel. So case in point, one of our clients, they decided to spend a lot of money into Facebook ads. So for some clients, for some businesses, I think the sponsored Facebook ads work really well. But in one of our clients' particular case, they will get a lot of Facebook likes, but then those customers tend to not convert ultimately. So what happens is that you end up spending a lot of money acquiring all these leads. You might get their emails, but then in the long term, they actually never converted. And so that's a big no-no for you. So the key is that don't blindly follow certain channels just because they're hot. But at the same time, like, know your audience. If you're selling, super random example, if you're selling bidets, one of my friends starting a business selling bidet, that's why it came to mind. Like, you're probably targeting older demographic, or you're working with retirement homes, and the fact that these are not a demographic that typically are very social, they're not very socially active. And so don't focus your avenue on social media. You should probably target, you should probably look into infomercial, direct mail, different channels. So I think understanding your audience and ultimately being able to measure them, and it's ultra important before you decide where to spend your money on. Another thing to look at is focus on the, I kind of talked about this a little bit, so focus on the channel that would drive the significant ROI. And then the previous ones, okay, yeah, so I kind of went ahead a little bit. So another thing to think about here is that when you're spending those money, always think about exactly how much you're willing to spend, because you want to know what your average order might be. So case in point, if you think that your customer acquisition cost is going to be $15, you better damn make sure that they're going to be spending at least 45 or 50 with you, so you're looking at a 2x return. I think someone mentioned earlier, I think Sean from Honest Company was talking about the 2.5 measure. And as you start talking to investors, and one of our investors was former chief marketing officer of Outlook. So it's a flash sale site that was actually acquired by Nordstrom for about $300 million. And one thing that he always talked about is that he always looked at business founders specifically who know exactly what's their cost per acquisition and how much each customer's lifetime value will be. And later on, we'll talk about sort of the concept of customer lifetime value. How do you calculate them? How do you evaluate and articulate them for your own type of business? So there's actually a really good article on CMO.com. If you just type in CMO.com, measure customer lifetime value, it has some calculation. I know you guys probably can't really see this very clearly, but I'll just kind of briefly kind of explain this. And depends on the kind of business you have. If you have a subscription commerce, or if you have a traditional e-commerce, or if you have a blend of different business model, it's actually very, very different. And so the key for you to really think about how to plan your marketing budget is to understand what are important to you. For example, there are different kind of formulas here, but at the end of the day, all you need to know is what's your average order value, and how often do you think your customers are likely to spend per year, or whatever your sort of the life cycle you're measuring. Depends on the type of product you sell. The repeat purchase rate can vary quite a bit. So if you're Warby Parker, you're selling a pair of glasses, that repeat purchase rate is probably not as high as someone who's selling t-shirts and apparel. So be very, very thoughtful around the kind of business that you have, and understand, you want to be able to articulate that, and also comes to your marketing, you need to be able to budget that, because your marketing should go in cycle as well. Like, you want to target repeat buyers and existing customers based on how likely they're going to buy again. So what are your success metrics? These are pretty important. These are things that we help our clients kind of focus on and improve. And I believe these are important enough that if you are in fundraising mode, or just like understanding the success of your business, these are the things that you want to be able to answer, and just kind of not have fluffy answers and just know to the dot. Customer lifetime value, I think a lot of us talk about that, but then it's still a very new concept at the end of the day, because a lot of times if you talk to the biggest retailers, they don't even know that. Partly it's because it is really hard when you're a retailer and then you sell a wide variety of brands and products. But then if you are like some of the guys that are starting small and selling on Shopify or other platforms, and then eventually kind of grow out into different verticals, you want to have a very clear plan of like, okay, for this particular vertical, my CLVs, my average CLV for this particular product is about $50, and then I'm moving to $75, and I'm moving to $100. That way, you can clearly articulate why you are growing the business a certain way, and then how you're justifying your marketing budget. Repeat purchase rate is quite important. Something that I think if you look at Zulily and some of the more successful flash sale sites, beyond the fact that they don't have the whole inventory, which is oftentimes the biggest setback for a lot of e-commerce, flash sale sites work really well because they are able to get so many repeat purchases from the same group of audience. And they have an advantage because they are indeed selling different types of brands, and so that gives them enough variety and generate enough of interest. But at the same time, if you are starting small, and some of us, we all got to start somewhere, and if you are only limited to one particular type of product and consumer experience, that's going to be difficult for you. But then you got to think of you got to continue to innovate, and just like what Sean talked about, when we started working with Honest Company more than a year ago, they weren't selling diaper bags, they weren't looking at all this other extension, they were really just kind of the core focus, which is diapers. And so as an e-commerce, you want to be very aware of kind of how you're extending that runway, and then in terms of product variety, so you could make sure that your products will actually end up, your products will actually be enough where the customers want to spend more with you. Customer re-engagement is really important. Make sure you guys actually measure how much time your customers are spending on your site, as well as how they browse your site. So you could very easily do that through Google Analytics, and just kind of that kind of typical funnel, just understanding exactly how they browse their site. Engagement does lead to conversion. That's a pretty straightforward math. The higher the engagement on an e-commerce site, we do correlate that to higher repeat purchase rate as well. So make sure you guys are able to talk about, for each logged in session, your customer tend to visit 3 pages, and out of 3 pages, they tend to see 10 products, and out of the 10 products, they'll read maybe 2 product descriptions. Like, you want to be able to articulate that kind of customer engagement on your site. And lastly, something that we talked about earlier, in terms of cost of acquisition and the ROI of it. Again, from a retention standpoint, I love what Hadi talked about in terms of the mystery coupon. But if you were to counter that a little bit, Sean this morning also talked about that for Whittleby, one of the biggest things he refused to do is to actually offer a lot of coupons, because at the end of the day, you don't want to create a business and train your customers to expect coupons. And that's why I think the mystery coupon was kind of cool, because you do that every once in a while, and then you generate interest, and then for sure works. We've seen that across the board. In fact, that's one of the features what we do for our clients. But at the same time, keep in mind that as you grow, and you need to show that kind of I know you guys all need to show that number, but then keep in mind that coupons do drive certain type of behaviors from the consumer end, and you just want to be very, very thoughtful around how to use that and how to market that, and the messaging is really, really important too, because you don't want a bunch of repeat customers that will only buy from you if you're giving away 20-30% discounts. I'm running low, so I'm going to go through the next couple of slides really quickly. So the next couple of slides are a little more technical, like more kind of tactical stuff. So in terms of some of the data points that you guys should analyze and just be very kind of thoughtful about. Sales data, behavioral data, demographics, social. These are all pretty simple stuff that should be straightforward to you. But the idea of being able to tie all those data into one and understand exactly, if someone spends 3 minutes on your site, that means that they're 80% more likely to spend with you. Or if you know that because you have your this is a whole separate topic, but if you're e-commerce, you're doing your shipping, you should have your drop shipment in somewhere in the middle, right? Typically Kansas City. Because then it goes both ways, and then it's two zones. Doesn't matter who you use. But so if you know that, and then you know that your customers who are on the West Coast are always outspend your customers on the East Coast, the moment you acquire those West Coast customers, or in fact you should target acquiring West Coast customers because you know they're more likely to be repeat purchasers. So all of that will lead to creating a much more engaged and relevant experience for for your customers. And some of the examples that we talked about earlier, at the end of the day, in order to retain your customers, you want to be able to create a custom experience for them at the right time, and also deliver the right content. So you want to be able to understand that out of your existing customers, there are people like Premium Patty, who's less price sensitive. There are people like Indifferent Irene, who really just doesn't care. And then you have folks like Chris, who are super sensitive to pricing. And then if you could figure out exactly who they are, then only offer those mystery coupons to them. So again, it's the concept of knowing your audience and being able to target them in an ultra targeted way will help you extend that runway and then create a much more sustainable business long term. Finally, the concept of life cycle is important. You do want to think about how long your customers will last, and this goes back to the knowing your product cycle. So if you know that most of your customers who come on site, when they give you your email, they're gonna actually go through a phase where they're highly engaged, but then they're probably gonna drop off. Then keep in mind that you want to know exactly when that is. Is it 14 days after they sign up? Is it 20 days? Then being able to create campaigns, whether it's email or mobile push notifications or whatever the tactic that you decide to use, figure out a way to re-engage them at a time that you think is more relevant, and try to catch them off guard, because that's the best time that you will get a response back. So Honest Company actually worked with us and then to do that, and then they actually are doing really, really well. We have a public case study with them on Internet Retailer. Feel free to look that up. And then one last point, how to be cost effective. There's a bunch of free tools. I'm out of time. Thank you. Yep.
So for subscription services, obviously, you have like pretty fixed price subscription. How do you measure who is more price sensitive and who's not?
Got it. So the question is around subscription commerce and how do you measure who are more sensitive. So there are many different ways. You look at your existing subscription base. So sometimes there is that cold start problem. If you're leveraging data, try to understand your total customer base. You're gonna have, in Honest's example, right? They are offering a premium product, so they are indeed trying to understand, who are the slightly more affluent moms, because their pricing points are a little higher. And so from the very beginning, how they're acquiring their customers, they're thinking about what are the premium channels. I know that this is a little bit around kind of how you acquire customers, but you look at mom bloggers and you look at who are their readers, and then look at what are items they purchase, and then trying to understand like, okay, if that's the audience I'm going after, then most likely they're a tiny bit less sensitive for in terms of pricing. But then I think the truth about modern day shoppers is that most of us if you're buying online, to really compare shop a little bit. And so most of us have gotten sophisticated enough where they are expecting some sort of offers and coupon to kind of join. And so it's very common to do that as a tactic to get them on board. Honest Company uses that as well. Questions? Cool. Thank you.
Okay, folks, we're done here. We're going to meet back in the next room at about 4:35. There's a brewski breakout in the hallway hosted by Excel Partners. So for those of you who want to start your happy hour on Friday early, it is 4:20 or a little bit after that. Hi.
I'm Kahori from SoftBank.
Kahori, nice to meet you.
And actually my current boss told me that he met you several times.
Yes, a few times.
Yes.
And actually,